I remember specifically my mom telling me when I was younger, she was like, because you have brown skin, like, you don't have to do anything wrong for you to get in trouble. You just got to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
There are some people in Germany who are afraid of the refugees, and they hear a lot on media that the refugees are they're committing a high amount of crimes or whatever they hear. And of course, when they see me, they sometimes think of me in that same light. So if I'm coming home and it's late at night and I'm just sitting at a bus stop, I will visibly notice sometimes uncomfortable people around me, and that really affected me personally, because I don't want people to be uncomfortable around me like I was the problem. So I try to surround myself with more Germans or people who weren't, who didn't look like me, so that people would be less suspicious of me. Looking back on myself now, I really that shouldn't be something I should have done. You need to be proud of your culture.
Throughout high school, elementary school, like basically throughout my life, I haven't been with that many Indians, so most of my time has been spent with like people who are not of my color. It's hard to relate with them in ways because they're like, whenever we're getting ready, like I remember this significantly, like when we're getting ready for prom, like my entire friend group, there was like just one other Indian, and like we were like, they were all sharing makeup and like relating to their skin color, I guess, and we were just like, yeah, we have our own thing,
Coming to college here, and especially like in the selection cycle, I felt as if like I felt more different. I thought I would come to college and I'd feel like more blended in, but I think I faced periods of time like here where I feel like people have told me that they don't find me attractive because I am of color. And I think that that's something like more so than offending me personally. I think the idea of not being attracted to someone, not because of their personality, not because of generally how they look, but just because of the fact that they're of a certain color, I think that's very closed-minded.
Growing up, I guess a lot of my fellow classmates, they weren't very accepting of the Indian culture in general, so they used to make fun of Indian people, and a lot of the times I was told by my friends that, oh, I guess you're good looking for an Indian, and I guess a lot of those words really affected me growing up because I never felt like I was pretty enough or I was good enough for my peers.
You could kind of tell by like the tone of people's voices when they were like complimenting or like whatever it was to like darker people. The way like I guess you could say groups in high school and everything formed, it was like the really like big groups where everyone kind of like gravitated towards. They were all lighter, so you could kind of tell that way, along with tone and that kind of thing. So it wasn't more of like how they treated each other, it was more of like a hidden kind of thing. But I do feel like some other people had at least like a semi-similar view, where like they could tell that was kind of happening, and that was like that existed there, and even in like such a diverse high school that I was in.
People like think about like, oh, I'm not attracted to them because they're of color. I hang out with too many people who are of this color. I think that's just like a very like tense, like uncomfortable way to think, because thinking about race that much I think is unhealthy.
A lot of times in America, it's very easy to say, oh, you're attractive for an Indian, or wow, if you weren't brown, look how attractive you'd be. It makes it feel like the whole game's stacked against you. For us to be treated the same way as society, we have to be better, essentially, to be looked at as even. So for an Indian to be regarded the same level as a top white actress, she has to not only be more talented, but she has to be more beautiful, and she has to be more committed, and that's the unfair thing. You see people like Aziz Ansari, but he's one of those guys that doesn't really associate with the Indian culture as much as other Indian actors. So it almost seems like the strategy for an Indian to really make it in American pop culture is to either act white or to push away from Indian culture itself.
Even in Bollywood, everyone tends to be lighter because that's the ideal standard of beauty in India too. Like my grandparents, they mean well, but they'll see me and they'll be like, oh, you've gotten darker. Or you hear like try like this like home remedy for something, or like they've never suggested Fair and Lovely because of chemicals, but like it's still like you still see like all of that marketing for things that are meant to make us lighter.
My dad's side of the family, I was the favorite daughter for some reason because I was darker and I looked more South Indian. And it was really weird. They treated my older sister differently, and then my mom's side of the family treats me and my little sister differently for just the reason that I'm darker and my older sister is lighter. They would send me a care package of Fair and Lovely. And I'm sure it's not, they were just looking out for me, for my well-being, because that's how it was in India. Like, the lighter you are, the more successful you are. But definitely the comments, especially when I was younger, they would say, oh, you got even darker. And then they would turn to my mom and be like, Mona, like, don't let her go out in the sun so much. I did suffer a little bit of bullying when I was younger, and that led to a lot of confidence issues. I had terrible self-confidence. I did not want dark skin. I looked into skin bleaching, and my mom found me and got really mad. And she didn't understand why. When you're young, you don't think people are prejudiced against skin color. But then when you start to realize it, you kind of look at yourself like you're the problem. You're not the problem. You're just born like that.
Everywhere that I looked, there were people who were a lot whiter than me, and they just had different features completely. And so the ideal for beauty there wasn't really, I didn't fit into that stereotype.
I did my art engagement with a few other people, actually. I was the darkest skinned person in my group, and I was a freshman in high school. I already had very low self-esteem and self-confidence issues in general, and I remember looking at the pictures thinking, why am I significantly darker than everybody else? And this isn't something in my control, but I just wish it were different. Not that I didn't know why. It's not like I thought I was an ugly person or anything. It's just something that stood out, and I never liked standing out in general. There's a lot more Indians here than where I went to high school, so it's definitely a lot more relatable in that sense. And I've met a lot of people who are kind of like me in that sense as well. So in terms of that idea of standing out, it's not as much anymore, and I like that. I like knowing that there's a community of people here that I can fall back on that are similar to me in a lot of different ways.
I think I'm a lot more comfortable now. I'm very comfortable in my skin. And if I could go back and tell them, I would just probably rant about how melanin is literally a chemical in our skin. It doesn't mean anything. And I wish people were more open-minded to that fact.
When I look on social media and stuff, I see people who are like, oh, she's pretty for an Indian, or let me rate her on the scale from 1 to 10 for an Indian, and then if she's not an Indian, on this scale. They consider it as two different types of things.
In addition to that, you experience the Indian culture, which is so warm, so loving, just filled with a great group of people and especially in this area of the country. So you get a lot of support.
I essentially grew up as an Indian in a mixed person's body. I have to embrace being different, and I have to live my life in that lens of I'm going to be different, but I'm going to be someone no one's going to forget.